Well, sorry about that. That was a complete mess as far as the introduction videos are concerned. You only got to see the sneak preview at the beautiful elephant ad for Gigabyte. But either way, we are going to be jumping into a best of three series between Bned Plus 5 and House of Gamers. This is going to be the Joint Dota League Division 1/2 Europe playoffs, and well, the winner of this is going to be one step closer to securing their slot into Division 1. And House of Gamers, this lineup is looking mighty fine as far as the star power is concerned with them. Running with Excalibur, Slash Strike, SLHC Key, and a moment, oh my goodness, sorry about that. They have been shuffling around and experimenting with these different players, and it's worked very well for them as of late. And on the side of Bned Plus 5, this is the same old lineup that we've seen time and time again, except they are running with a stand-in, I believe, Johnny Crypto is going to be their stand-in. I've seen IDFC play with them before, so I'm not sure if that's just a stand-in tag or what have you. But I'd look to see the Meepo banned out as much as it breaks my heart. I think that's going to be taken out by Bned Plus 5 in the next slot, although Tinker's going to be available in the pool. Excalibur probably isn't going to play it, mostly due to the changes that have occurred in 6.82 to that Tinker. If they want it, they might snag it up later on. Really, the way you have to play Tinker now is less of that ultra farming carry, and more of an aggressive ganker, maxing out your missiles and rockets. Kind of like how we used to see Tinker be handled in the earlier stages. But yeah, apologies about the intro. If I haven't already made it clear, I'm Grandis V, and I'm going to be your caster today. Unfortunately, I don't have a co-caster, at least for game number 1. Hopefully, in game number 2, I'll have somebody else along with me. Earthshaker the band coming out from House of Gamers. To follow up their Death Prophet and the Spectre first ban is very peculiar coming out from Bned Plus 5, but I definitely think that Spectre deserves a pretty high priority in the banning stage, as it's a very solid hero all around. Yeah, Tinker's the ban, actually. Coming out from Bned Plus 5, and if House of Gamers want to go for the Meatbow, I want to see it. I really want to see it coming out from them. They might not snag up as their first pick, but then again, I think when you have a Meepo player like Excalibur, it's definitely worthwhile getting that hero pretty early on in the draft. Even though it's risky, I think it's what I want to see. But no, it's going to be House of Gamers snagging up the Wisp for themselves, which is probably going to mean that we're going to see an Excalibur Tiny this game. A lot of focus is going to be on him during this game, and it's not without reason. A very individually talented player. The response from Bned Plus 5 is going to be a Naga Siren first pick. If you're going to prioritize the hero this early on, it's suggesting that it's going to be a carry Naga. Although, it is a benefit of the hero that you can shuffle it around a little bit as far as where it's going to be played. So yeah, we'll see. Naga Siren's song is pretty good if you're jumping in with an IO and Tiny, and you can just delay the time that they're spending at the relocated spot, and it could be very easy to disengage there using the Song of the Siren. So even if it's a support Naga, it's still pretty solid. Bned Plus 5 have another hero to snag up after this. I'm not sure where they're going to take this draft. I'm still pretty new to this patch, as are the teams. I'm not sure how they've fully adapted to how this patch is working out. Both of Excalibur's signature heroes, I would say, got quite a bit worse in this patch, Tinker and Meepo. Tinker being directly nerfed, and Meepo, because of the experience changes or the way the bounties work now, is a lot less attractive, but he can still snowball as hard as ever, and I still think it's worth the pickup every once in a while, but it's, I don't know, definitely a little bit more difficult to safely pick that hero up early on in the draft. Yeah, hoping that all of my audio issues are fine on stream. If there are any problems, I will check the chat every once in a while, but as I'm a solo caster here, it's going to be pretty difficult for me to make sure that everything's running smoothly, so I'm praying that we don't have any issues. It's going to be a Tidehunter for Bned Plus 5, so starting out with the fishy strat, Tidehunter is going to offer them quite a bit of team fight, also pretty good at counter-initiating an IO Tiny that tries to relocate on top of you, just Ravage and run or Ravage and fight, whatever the case may be. Bned Plus 5 have a pretty solid team fight of their own, but these heroes don't really tend towards any direction on their own, and don't really have the best synergy together. A huge song into a gigantic Ravage from the Tidehunter is always great, 10 seconds to but it's limited synergy at best. House of Gamers, I'd expect them to pick up their IO partner here. Whatever it may be, is they will leave it open to be banned out in the second phase, and they're going to have to deal with whatever the ban comes out from Bned Plus 5. Viper the pickup for House of Gamers. Yeah, the nerf for Viper in this current patch was very limited and didn't really hit the hero hard at all by any stretch of the imagination. The corrosive skin is still strong. I think the biggest change, actually, is that Mechanism now costs a whole truckload of mana, especially for a Viper that already was kind of struggling with the mana pool, but it was workable. Now, getting a Viper Mechanism is a little bit questionable, and we'll have to see if House of Gamers still want to run that Viper in the similar way. It's still going to be a great lane dominating hero that's solid in most lineups. So it could be their choice anyway. You'll probably still have enough mana for one Viper Strike, a Mechanism, and a couple of poison attacks, but you're going to be pretty strapped for mana, especially when you get an Aghanim Scepter. Spamming it out every 12 seconds is going to be pretty difficult. Ember Spirit, the ban coming out from Bened +5, a very peculiar ban. To be honest, I'm not sure they would have gone for the Ember. The lockdown coming out from Bened +5 is decent, but not great, so they might be considering going for heroes that wouldn't lock down the Ember Spirit at all. The Naganet's going to do squat versus that hero. They have the Ravage, which is pretty solid lockdown, but in and of itself, they don't have enough damage in order to deal with that hero. House of Gamers ban out the Skywrath Mage, no big surprises there. And Skywrath is still really solid, does a lot of damage, silence is still pretty good, and that's all you have to ask for. Enigma, the next pickup for House of Gamers, would have bolstered their team fight even more. Bened +5, potentially looking to invest very heavily into it. Disruptor is still available in the pool, and one of the first heroes that comes to mind when you think about a IO +1. When they're relocating, you can glimpse one of them back, and you can also just drop the Static Storm Kinetic Field on top of where they're going to relocate, making it very difficult for them to actually do anything once they come there. So yeah, could be an option. Could be an option for sure. Centaur, the ban coming out from Bened +5, and Meepo persists throughout this pool. Although I'm not sure if they're comfortable running it with the Wisp on the same side. It's still yet to be seen. Titan and Naga Siren are decently good up against that aforementioned Meepo. But this draft really isn't going to evolve until we see the next couple of picks, as right now it could go in a lot of different directions. I'd love to see House of Gamers pick something along the lines of a Sven or Chaos Knight as their Wisp partner, but I think since Tiny is still available, it's probably just the most solid hero to go along with it, and it's something that they should be comfortable with. So I think that's going to be their snag. As far as their safe lane farming hero, Viper presumably going towards the mid, leaving a support and offlaner still left for House of Gamers. Offlaners left in the pool. Nature's Prophet would also bolster their global presence with the global TP coming out from him, as well as the Nature's Wrath. Could be a pretty solid pickup as their offlaner, although the initiation from him would be pretty weak. Beastmaster, since they're on the dire side, might be an option. I'd love to see a little bit more Beastmaster myself. There's still plenty of options, although the two offlaners that come immediately to mind, Tidehunter and Centaur, are either picked or banned out from House of Gamers. Bened +5 taking their sweet time with this first pick in the second picking stage. Potentially thinking of how they're going to pick around House of Gamers. Right now, I think House of Gamers are going to get whatever they want. Honestly, I wasn't thinking about the Ember Spirit or Centaur when I was looking at their draft. An Ancient Apparition pickup for Bened +5. It really feels like House of Gamers are going to be able to play their game, and that's really scary. I'd say in this matchup, House of Gamers are favored before they picked up Excalibur and Slash Strike and did the little bit of shuffle in their heroes, or players, excuse me. I'd say that both of these teams are fairly even matched up, but right now, the individual skill is favoring House of Gamers, and I believe we're on a neutral server for both of these teams, so that's not going to be in consideration throughout all of this. And, well, House of Gamers, I think it's just going to be a tiny pick here, although it's not going to be instantly snagged up, so we might
reserve time.
Be seeing something a little bit different. Yep. Yeah, House of Gamers are taking their sweet time, so maybe it's not going to be a tiny, or they're looking to fill the offlane role here. Honestly, they might just settle down on that Wisp partner right now. I think that's probably your most solid way of doing so is, I don't know, it's just weird to see IO without Tiny, or without anything of the sort. It's going to be Rubik pick for House of Gamers with already one huge teamfight ultimate in the Tidehunter Ravage to steal. The other spells are kind of lackluster. You're not going to be able to get your hands on them. As Naga Siren, once she songs, is probably going to split or Riptide or something along the sorts, and Ancient Apparition is just going to be positioned so far back that you won't be able to snag that Ice Blast reliably. Rubik still going to be a solid support, although early game for House of Gamers is going to be fairly passive, but with a Wisp on your side, that's kind of already expected. Early game, IO does very little, especially on its own. Can enable heroes to get in range better for their stuns, but doesn't offer any lockdown in a vacuum. House of Gamers still have their carry to pick up, and Brewmaster picked up by Bened +5. he's actually been ignored throughout all of this. Would have been a decent offlaner for House of Gamers to run with, although up against an Ancient Apparition Naga Siren +1 tri-lane could be problematic for Bennett +5. This last pick for Bennett +5 is going to secure whether or not that Naga Siren is farming core or not. I'd assume as much, and we might be looking at an aggressive tri-lane from a Bennett +5. Tidehunter and Brewmaster potentially going to be your side lane cores with Naga Siren farming mid. But they have a decent amount of lane flexibility, and Bennett +5, that's going to benefit them in this draft. House of Gamers, if they didn't pick the Tiny in the first pick and the second picking stage, I think they should probably pick it up here, unless they go for something completely different. No, it is just going to be the Tiny for House of Gamers. Your bread and butter combo with the Wisp. Late game, even if you're going up against an Naga Siren, is still going to be very problematic for Bennett +5 when you're dealing with that Tiny. It could be fairly even, but Tiny munches through those Naga Siren illusions fairly easily, and with the global presence of the IO backing him up, can always be there for the team fights and can split push in a similar manner to the Naga Siren, although not as intense. There will be different points where these two heroes peak, but still, House of Gamers are going to be pretty happy that they get that solid combo. The offlaner for House of Gamers, there's not anything great available in the pool. Darkseer wouldn't be a bad choice, as you're going to get that Naga Siren Radiance illusion if you can catch her in the Wall of Replica, also Vacuum into Avalanche, as well as Toss is pretty solid, but there's not anything else to combo with it. It might be their choice. For sure, especially if you're looking at a melee hero farming in that lane, it could also work very well for them. In that sense, also taking the mechanism burden off of the Viper will allow him to have a lot more mana to spam out his Viper strikes and poison attacks throughout the team fights. I'd like to see the Darkseer from House of Gamers quite a bit, although they might go for something with a little bit more oomph. The Tiny and Io potentially going towards the mid lane, although I think that's just going to be your safe lane farming heroes. With the Rubik running the pulling operations, Io going to just be babysitting the Tiny, potentially getting some stacks off of their own. That definitely could work out for them. Tidehunter up against a Rubik, Io, Tiny, tri-lane should be able to get a decent amount, as the Witch Doctor's the last ban from House of Gamers. Ravage into Ancient Apparition, Ice Blast with the Witch Doctor, Death Ward being channeled throughout all of that is a ridiculous amount of team fight damage, and House of Gamers, assuming that Bennett +5 are going to run the Naga Siren as a core hero, as am I think that's probably where they're going to end up landing this Naga. Bennett +5 are going to be considering what they're going to go for. As far as other supports that are still available in the pool, Vengeful Spirit wouldn't be awful, as just having a nice play stun, setting up for the Ancient Apparition Cold Feet, as well as a ranged hero to use the Chilling Touch, although not the best, is still a pretty solid support. Defensive swap is never really a bad idea. But they could be going for something completely different. The support pool is looking pretty lackluster. Shadow Shum is available, although they might not go for it. It is just going to be the Venge for Bennett +5. I think that's a solid choice. I don't know, can't really go wrong with the Vengeful Spirit, is hardly ever bad, although if you are behind, defensive swaps are more often than not going to lead to the death of the Vengeful Spirit, but heck, that's what your supports are there for. Save your cores, especially when you're running a 4 Protect 1 lineup, as Bennett +5 are, throwing all of their eggs into the Naga Siren basket. So if a swap can lead to the Naga Siren surviving where the Vengeful Spirit dies, completely acceptable. House of Gamers, I'd love to see that Darkseer, although we haven't seen a lot of him as of late, so they might be considering something different. It's going to be a Timber Saw for them, with a Brewmaster as well as Tidehunter on the pitch, as well as a melee Naga Siren. It's going to offer them a lot of damage, although I would have liked to see a little bit more teamfight control coming out from them. Timber Saw, especially in the new patch, can do a whole heck of a lot of work. If you get a Bloodstone as well as Aghanim Scepter online, yeah, so it's just going to be House of Gamers' choice. It's going to give them a lot more oomph in their team fights come the middle-late game. But then again, you're probably going to see this Timber Saw forcing getting a BKB, as to not deal with Ravage as well as the Brewmaster, Split, Vengeful Spirit, Magic Missile, and things of the like. But that said, into the game we're going to go, and on the Radiant side, it is Bennett +5. And with the Vengeful Spirit being handled by Jabane 0, Blacks on the Ancient Apparition, it looks like it's going to be a safe lane farming, potentially mid, Naga Siren, played by IDFC. We're going to have Johnny Krypton playing on the Brewmaster, with solo offlane Tidehunter being handled by Nemoranios. On the Dire side, we are going to have House of Gamers currently looking towards the mid lane with Key on the Io. Excalibur going to be handling the Tiny, rocking the Star Ladder series skin. And we are going to see Slash Strike playing on safe lane farming Viper with a moment on the Rubik, leaving Timbersaw solo off lane, played by SLHZ. This Timbersaw is going to have a pretty difficult time in the lane, although should be able to get some decent experience at the very least. And that's all you can really hope for a Timbersaw. He needs to be careful as to not die. Magic Missile as well as follow-up net with Chilling Touch and all of the heroes wailing on him. Timbersaw is not going to survive very effectively, although he is rocking a decent amount of regen with the Tangas as well as Salve and Stout Shield and then reactive armor to help counteract that. SLHD needs to tread very carefully and just try to get as much experience as possible. Currently sitting on 0-minute rune, both of the heroes from House of Gamers looks like they're going to secure this for their team, as nobody from Bened +5 are even close. Bounty rune's going to go to one of these heroes, and then the other rune to the opposite one. Ancient Apparition potentially gets the bottom rune. I don't know, Timbersaw should be able to swagger his way down towards here. It is going to be pinged out. Is he going to walk close enough? Ancient Apparition drops an auto attack, and the rune is going to secure a bounty by the Timbersaw. Getting closer to his level 6 is the rune up top. It's a double damage rune set up by the IO, potentially picked up by the Viper, or maybe even the Wisp himself to get some zoning onto this Brewmaster in mid. Tiny versus Brewmaster as a mid 1v1 matchup would be Brewmaster favored, but with the X factor being the Wisp, I think the Excalibur is going to have a fine time, and in fact it's getting a much better block than Johnny Krypton, and is going to have the time of his life. This Brewmaster can't really do much about the Tiny, currently sitting at a base damage advantage over the laning opponent. Double damage rune picked up by the IO is actually going to back off towards top, feeling that Excalibur is going to be just fine 1v1. Guaranteed crit's going to secure the Brewmaster, one of the last hits here. So it's going to start off fairly evenly, but as they might go up on top with the double damage rune on the Wisp, as well as the poison attack slows from Slash Strike, they're going to drop this Tidehunter very low. Will the double damage be enough? They need one more auto attack. Nemoranios, he's going to be dropped Fade Bolt, one more auto attack from Key is going to secure it. Although Key, stuck inside the trees, is going to be able to tether away to his friendly Rubik, and that's going to be First Blood secured by House of Gamers, and very terrible start for them. This laning choice coming out from House of Gamers to throw the Tiny towards mid lane is working wonders for them. Although he's going to have a traded time with this Brewmaster, I think that's probably the best way to put it, is Brew's going to have a fine time. It's going to secure pretty much everybody on their team good farm, the exception being the Timbersaw, but Timbersaw still hasn't died and is going to get his level to very shortly one more creep until he has that available. And he'll get this from the range creep, which will probably be denied. No, it's going to just be thrown the way of the Timbersaw. Already having a great time compared to that of the Tidehunter. Tidehunter getting a little bit more experience, but if you're going to be the one to give the first blood, I'd much rather be the Timbersaw and just lose a couple more creeps. Nagasarn is going to be more or less untouched, which is wonderful for Bened +5. These supports from HOG can't do much about this, and in that sense, their early game is working out for them. Although I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. You're going to be seeding a Tiny that's going to get some really good farm. Boots already online for Excalibur, presumably going for a bottle next. Or rather, the bottle on the Wisp already is going to make up for the fact that he doesn't have one. And Key can just kind of chill around with Excalibur, stacking up for him that he can clear later with some Avalanche tosses, as well as an Aghanim Scepter. Wisp is going down towards the bottom room with the Ace Rune. He is going to be Magic Missile stunned up, securing the bounty for the Radiant team. Although Key with the Wisp Orbs is going to put a little bit of damage onto Domain 0, or will he? They aren't going to connect just yet. One gets thrown into Johnny Krypton, a couple more into Dubane 0, but Key with Aestrin feeling more or less immortal, and since the Magic Missile has already been spent, I don't think that they're going to be able to do anything about this to punish the Wisp's aggression. So well played all around. Viper, similarly to the Nagasarn, is going to have untouched farm, as the Tidehunter can't do anything, even in a 1v1 lane, and not to mention having a Rubik that's pulling, as well as offering the threat of a lift. Nemoranios is not going to be able to get very much at all out of this lane. But currently sitting at level 3. The supports coming out from HOG are going to make this game fairly passive. If any kills happen, it's probably just going to be an overextension from either side. Passive game, in most cases, is going to farm or favor Bened +5, but honestly right now it's not going to do so. As SLHD caught out inside the trees, oh, they found him. Magic Missile is going to be available. They have the Chilling Touch as well to get that extra bit of damage, although no net from the Nagasarn. SLHZ probably going to be able to walk back towards his side of the map, as well as with a Timber Chain to get over to that tree. He'll be forced to use a salve, or at least through the rest of his tangas, in order to get to a reasonable amount of HP. But still, that's going to give him quite a bit of leeway, as there's no mana on Vengeful Spirit for another stun. And IDFC, without a point in the net, they can't kill this Timbersaw very effectively. He's going to eat a little bit more Chilling Touch harassment, but Timbersaw, for the next minute or so, is going to be able to get some pretty good experience. Yeah, Arcane Boots and Soul Ring and things like that aren't going to come out from SLHD for quite some time. He's going to drop a Timber Chain as he trades some hits with IDFC, getting the lesser half of that stick, but still, he still has some regen to work with, and that'll be his choice to do so. Rubik rotating towards mid. Not going to find anybody. His Brewmaster is getting another Bounty Rune down into towards bottom. It's going to fill up his bottle, and the IO's bottle is also going to be replenished by the Invis Rune. Immediately pop, just to give Excalibur a little bit more regen. Brewmaster is going to spot out the Wisp from the high ground as he's going to walk down towards bottom. I have no idea what this Wisp plan is, just checking out the rune as they don't have any vision down there. Potentially expecting a ward here. It has been pinged out by the Brewmaster, but it's not going to be the case. The only reason why he was rotating down there was because they didn't have a ward on the bounty rune down towards bottom. So yeah, the next level of regression should come as soon as we have those key items coming out from both teams. Viper currently going into power treads, potentially the mech builder for his team, although I would like to see him shy away from that, as I'm not sure if he has enough mana to really sustain the usage of that mech throughout most of the team fights, and it might be better just to go for something completely different. Maybe rush the Ag straight up, or something along those lines. A moment is going to be potentially looking for a wraparound on the Tide, although he's playing defensively enough to be fine. He's going to be lifted up back into the loving arms of Slash Strike. The poison attacks are going to do a lot of damage. The body blocks aren't that great from a moment. He's going to be turned on, however, Nemoranios is probably going to fall here. The Anchor Smash is going to reduce the damage, but not enough. A moment is going to be able to escape as Viper gets kill onto the Tidehunter yet again. Tiny in mid going to need a Thunderclap from Johnny Krypton, but the Avalanche is going to come through. The Wisp Orb's doing a decent amount of damage as well, but just some traded harass. And the bottle on the Wisp is going to keep everybody a decent amount of health, as is the bottle on the Brewmaster, so not much lost by either side. IDFC looks like he's rushing straight towards that Relic as Rubik dies to the neutral creep. I like this play coming out from the Rubik. It's only 12 seconds where he has to wait inside the well, and as long as he spends his gold beforehand, which I believe he did, or at least he didn't have any gold to begin with, it's going to be just fine. I'd like to see more people do it. It might make the kill score look a little bit more yucky, but that doesn't matter. It's, for all intents and purposes, 0 and 2. As Johnny Krypton eats a combo from Excalibur, they're looking for a little bit more damage, although they don't have it. Split is not available for Johnny Krypton as he's only level 5, but they have backup in the reserve. Vengeful Spirit as well as the Tiny are here as Excalibur's man fighting, looking for the kill into Johnny Krypton. He has a double damage rune. Excalibur slowed up. I'm not sure he's going to be able to get the kill, although I don't think he's going to die either. Will they be able to chase him down? Another Gush is coming off cooldown. Gush, Magic Missile, they secure the kill on Excalibur, who overstayed his welcome a little bit. The Wisp having no mana or no bottle charges left to assist his Tiny brother is going to cost them their life there. So yeah. Early game is now looking a lot better for Meta +5, despite losing her Tidehunter twice. It's a crucial kill on the Tiny to snag up. Tiny's going to be going towards the drums next, and IDFC is getting a whole lot closer to his Relic. This is going to be pretty much a free farm Relic for your Naga Siren. 43 CS at almost 7 minutes in is nothing to scoff at. Similar to the Viper's farm, can't really ask for much more. Yeah, we'll be forced to buy a salve as there's no other regen in this lane. It's taking a decent amount of harass, so the salve's going to be cancelled. Let's go aggressively on IDFC. If she dies here, it could be huge. Wisp Orbs can't be controlled, and Song TP out from Naga Siren is going to secure a retreat and a crucial escape. She would have lost about 200 gold, and when you're saving up for a Relic, that's a lot of gold to be farming up again. Toss going to go into Johnny Krypton. This time he has his level 6. They're going to pull him back in. However, he gets a split off, and Excalibur needs to be very careful. Forced to back off. The Boulder Toss comes through. Now they're looking for a little bit of extra damage with the Windwalk. They throw the Rubik up in the air to ensure that Excalibur is going to die. The aggro is not toggled off of the Fire Creep, but it doesn't matter as the Magic Missile comes through. And just like that, HOG, the early game was looking wonderful for them, but now heavily in the favor of Bened +5 as they get those 2 kills on the Tiny. Wisp Orbs chasing down Johnny Krypton, looking for this kill after he comes back from his Brewmaster True form. He is going to be right-clicked down by the Rubik. The overcharge is going to keep them both safe. The right-clicks are going to be there as Io gets a return kill on the Brewmaster. But still, I'd say that the Tiny kill is a little bit more important. Let me just make sure that nothing's going on. I will have a co-caster for game number 2, as Mike Loris will be able to join me then, which will be wonderful. As down at bottom, they blow up the Ancient Apparition. Timbersaw is also going to fall, however, to IDFC, so I'm not sure if that's worth it. If they get this call in the Naga Siren, it sure as hell will, and there you go with the Wisp Orbs. Killing spree for Keys, somehow managing to find the last hits on all of the 3 kills he's been involved in. Primal Split stolen by a moment, and HOG are going to strike back. A very topsy-turvy game. The Viper's been incredibly quiet up top, finishing up the Aquila after the power treads. A lot of intermediate items for him. Yeah, let me go ahead and respond to Mike Flores so that I can have everything done. And confirm that he will be here. Sorry about missing that last kill. It was on the Vengeful Spirit. Yeah, it's just a pain to keep track of things. That was a split being used by the Rubik, and I wish I was watching as IDFC is going to be aggressively gone on by SLHD, but he misses with the Chakram damage as well as the soul. Be able to Timber Chain through Johnny Krypton, taking a little bit more damage than he's comfortable with, and will be forced back. Riptide stolen by the Rubik. Probably would have gotten another use out of the split, although he might have been able to hold on to one. I would have liked to see a moment hold on to it. I'm not sure what the exact cooldown on that spell was, and what have you. Ancient Apparition dropping pretty low up in the top lane. They were going aggressively, and they find themselves a kill onto Slash Strike. The Viper finally being punished. He did buy an Ogre Club before falling down, and a lot of aggression being spread out across the map. Tiny's being left alone throughout all of this, but since he's died twice, Tiny not getting closer to any more items on top of his power treads as well as Bracer. Naga Siren, IDFC, almost 3,000 gold available, still 1,000 until IDFC has the money for the relic. It should be apparently very obvious for HOG that she is going to be rushing towards that Radiance. Toss comes through from the Tiny. Although Avalanche isn't going to be spent, Bounty Rune as well as Double Damage Rune are going to be secured both by HOG. The smoke comes out from the Rubik, and if they can kill this Naga, it could be pretty huge. He's going to bump into some illusions, but the real Naga Siren is currently in the mid lane. Naga Siren's song is back off of cooldown, so it's not the easiest kill for House of Gamers to snag. Although if they're able to isolate her out, get a lift, Avalanche Toss combo should be all that they'll need to snag that up, especially now that Tiny has his level 8. Timbersaw is going to be working towards the Soul Ring after finishing up the Arcane Boots. The Bloodstone buildup is a lot better. Timber Chain's over towards his friendly Rubik. Not going to be going aggressively at all, as IDFC and company are going to be wrapping around on SLHZ, but the Ancient Apparition taking too much damage, and the Whirling Death going to secure it. Split's going to be spent by the Brewmaster, and now they're going to turn into SLHZ. SLHZ is going to die before King Jabane 0, or will he? Timber Chain's across. The split damage is not going to be enough, as he doesn't get the first bit from the chain in. They did relocate in their Tiny as well as their Wisp, not able to get anything off as they were thrown up in the air, and now going to be pulled back towards mid lane. First usage of relocate is going to be more or less unsuccessful. A fairly large win for Bennett +5, giving a little bit more gold towards the Naga Siren, well on her way towards an incredibly fast Radiance. Looking at a 12-minute relic is where you really want to be. I don't know, she's been away from creeps for quite some time as there's been some pressure on her lane, but still IDFC farming admirably. Slash Strike going to be building a drums, and it looks like it's going to be a drums as well for the Tiny. Not a huge fan of this choice to go for double drums. I would have liked to see the Tiny or the Viper head straight for the Aghanim Scepter, but either way, it's still a very nice item to have, and the extra drum charges are not going to go amiss, although the game impact is not going to be anywhere close to this Blink Dagger on Johnny Krypton. Blink Clap Split is going to be the scariest tool on this map for quite some time. Tide Hunter Ravage is available. It has been used previously, but coming off of cooldown in a couple of seconds. We are going to have that, especially with the smoke coming up from Jabane 0 as well as Blacks. If the Viper gets a little too comfortable here, Slash Strike might die, although he's backing off far enough in order to keep himself safe. Naga Siren Relic is going to be online just a little bit over 12 minutes. It's a fine timing for your Naga Siren. She would have had it faster. If she wasn't pressured as much, but I don't know, there's not much more that you can ask for. The only tower to fall on the Radiant side is that tier 1 tower towards the top lane, and that's completely acceptable loss when you're rushing Radiances. They relocate. Naga Siren's song going to keep IDFC safe, and he already bought the relic, so it's not going to be the worst death even if he does fall now, but you definitely don't want to be losing your Naga Siren. Relic on 9 for IDFC, going to summon some illusions as he backs off towards base to refill up his mana. Another relocate going to be more or less unfruitful. Tiny now working presumably towards his own Aghanim Scepter, as is the Viper. The Ogre Club purchased earlier was still sitting on the courier and wasn't delivered, as we are going to see a kill on the Vengeful Spirit in mid as they jump very aggressively onto keys. Probably going to shatter as Johnny Krypton doesn't get the ultimate off still on cooldown, but the Ravage is going to come through onto a moment. Probably going to be slated to fall as a couple more auto attacks is all that they need. Blink one more smack of his club. Johnny Krypton notching kill on the Rubik, although it costs them a Ravage to trade evenly. A little bit more action going on. I need to close that stupid fight recap, as they will be able to find the Ancient Apparition. Tiny, just one combo is all that you needed. Sorry about that, still getting used to the new changes. Either way, Viper has been pretty much left alone throughout all of this, but now Tiny's going to have his first portion towards his Aghanim Scepter with the point booster online for Excalibur. And now into the tier 1 tower, they're going to push a little bit. They do have a TP in from the Vengeful Spirit, although there's not a lot of backup, though they don't know it. Split going to be committed to Slash Strike. He hasn't been boulder tossed yet, or the first boulder toss wasn't enough. They throw him up in the air just to delay things. His key is also here. Key currently sitting in a very awkward position on the high ground. They might be able to clean up this Wisp, whose Brewmaster is going to recollect himself closer towards the top lane. Ancient Apparition Ice Blast is going to land squarely onto Key, although he's going to be fine. Tranquil Blitz is going to prove very useful at keeping himself a decent amount of HP. Mid lane Excalibur, in a very awkward situation, isn't going to die and is going to be able to back off now that he's paired back up with his Wisp. they'll both be able to regen a little bit of health, although the mana situation isn't great for Key. It's still plenty for Excalibur to drop his combo, which is all that he really needs.
Radiant's bottom tower.
Timbersaw has been pretty quiet throughout the entirety of this. Is going to be getting dangerously close to his Bloodstone. Only 2 portions away, the recipe as well as the Vitality Booster, and almost has enough for the recipes. We go into a pause. I'll go ahead and check the chat and make sure that everything's going good, and well, there we go. Looks like everything's completely fine. Yeah. Hopefully having Mike Loris around will make this a little bit less painful to watch, and then we won't have so many issues. But either way, it's not going to be the case. Wisp is completely invisible on my screen. Hopefully that's not the case for the players. I think it's just a pause bug. You can kind of see the shadow there. You can also not draw during pauses, which is fairly frustrating. It's the time that I'd love to draw most. Either way. This pause is not going to be at a very exciting time. I guess we'll be able to take a gander at the graphs. Currently advantage towards House of Gamers, just being more efficient around the map and getting more farm, but crucially, Nagasaren's getting closer to a Radiance. And once you have that, Bennett plus 5 are going to get a huge boost of power, at least in the farming department. Deny not going to come out for this Nagasaren Illusions. I think they could have gotten it if they tried for it, maybe mid-animation while it was killed. But it was very darn close. Relocate down towards bottom. Black's looking to be in a lot of trouble with be able to get the avalanche off. They toss and now get the slow off. Ancient Apparition Eye Spot's not going to stay for long. Is Timbersaw not just the kill with just the drive-by with the Timber Chain. It's going to be your Soul Booster completed for the Timbersaws. They do jump back in towards mid lane with Excalibur and Key now. Also tagged up with Slash Strike. The tier 1 tower in mid was previously taken, and HOG are getting quite a lot out of this map. Although the relocates haven't been that great, the last one's still securing a kill, and they're using it off of cooldown, which is what I love to see. When you look at a Tiny Wisp combo, this is the time where they can make a lot happen. They can farm pretty effectively, and they can also look for those kills, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. Excalibur now at level 10, and working closer towards his Aghanim Scepter. It's not going to be a fast Ags by any means, since he backed off for the drums and also died twice in lane, but it's still going to be a serviceable time for them, probably coinciding with Nagasaren's next item after Radiance, Yasha, Boots of Travel, whatever it might be. The Rubik hasn't really done very much, with the exception being of that split steal down towards bottom. Was able to make a kill, but honestly, that's just kind of what the Rubik's there for. Just waiting for those big team fights that haven't happened yet, as both teams are just waiting for those big items to come up on their carries, Tiny's Ags, as well as the Nagasaren and Radiance. Viper hasn't decided yet, or I'm not sure if he's going for BKB or Aghanim Scepter. I'd kind of like to see the BKB a little bit more, counteracting the Ravage coming out from the Tidehunter as well as the Brewmaster split could be very useful. It's kind of a double-edged sword since you can pop an Nagasaren Song and then focus that BKB target while the rest of his team is sleeping. So you might consider the Aghanim Scepter. I don't think you can really go wrong with either of those choices. Both would be incredibly useful. Tanking up, just with the amount of stats, as well as just offering a little bit of utility, although in different directions with either of those items. Nagasaren Radiance is getting dangerously close to being finished. After this creep wave, she'll have it. Nagasaren IDFC is going to start accelerating her farm by quite a large amount. It's going to be sub 20 minutes, although it's a purely rushed Radiance. Similar items are coming out for the enemy team, as Timbersaw's been able to find a couple of kills, and now Bloodstone completed at 17 minutes in. A very fast Bloodstone for SLHZ, and they'll be able to put that to good use as the Viper's going to be gone on up and top. They didn't have to commit the split, but the Vengeful Spirit's done, as well as the Tidehunter, just getting the Gush and the right clicks through is enough. Yeah, Viper's been caught out several times like that. I was expecting Viper to play a little bit safer, but still. Excalibur in mid, going clear up the creep wave. He might be in a little bit of trouble. They do have the Clap Split available, as well as the Tidehunter that does have Ravage. He will back off the Ancient Apparition Eye Spot. It's going to be completely off the mark, as it's sent a little bit too late. Timbersaw disconnecting. We're probably going to see a pause, as we're going to wait for SLHZ. Yep, I'll go ahead and look away from the Tiny and Wisp, as that overcharged sound can get quite annoying, so that's going to be the state of things. Yeah, those big team fight ultimates for Bened plus 5 are online, although we don't have a lot of mana, and the Brewmaster does have some bottle charges to remedy that fact. Nagasaren's Song is also available. Nagasaren's not completely online. Ideally, you'll have a Mantis-style Boots of Travel as well as the Radiance before you actually become the scary Nagasaren that we know you can become. Yeah, so a moment. We are going to be waiting a moment for the Timbersaw to get back into this game. It's looking really good for House of Gamers, but there's always that nagging threat of the Naga in the back of their minds, especially since they're bleeding heroes. The Viper, despite farming incredibly well, has been picked off twice up in that top lane. The net worth is still looking very much in the favor of HOG, although curving slightly, and I'd expect it to stay at about this spot for quite some time unless a big team fight happens, which it definitely could. 7,500 gold, a little bit more, closer to 8,000 advantage going the way of House of Gamers. Experience also in a similar boat, although not to the same extent, about 4,000 there once it completely updates. This is mostly due to their map efficiency, the Timbersaw farming about the same as the Naga Siren, and then the Tiny as well as Viper leaps and bounds ahead of her in that department. Still, that's not going to maintain the status quo for long. Yep, Ancient Apparition level 6 hasn't really come in huge as of yet. A couple of Ancient Apparition Ice Blasts have landed, but if they're able to drop all of their ultimates in a clumped up team fight, HOG are not going to be looking very good at all. Fighting into Ravage as well as Brewmaster Primal Split, Ancient Apparition Ultimate is pretty huge. And in that sense, this lead coming out from HOG is kind of deceiving. The fighting potential coming out from Bened plus 5 is still pretty huge. Getting a Tidehunter, his mechanism will be very useful. He has the enough gold in order to do so. My goodness, stumbling over words. He won't have enough mana in order to use all of his spells, however, if he does go for the mechanism first without going for Arcane Boots. So I might back off for those first. We'll see how Tidehunter wants to play it. With his current build, that might be the choice. 1 point into Kraken Shell, the Stout Shield, as well as maxed out Gush and Anchor Smash. It's a pretty aggressive Tidehunter build that's working out. Kind of unconventional. It gives up the ability to farm up Ancients as effectively. But he's been playing it reasonably well. Yeah, but it's times like these that I'd love to have a co-caster to bounce ideas off. Hopefully Mike is in the chat and interacting, or maybe he's still wrapping things up at HeflaTV 1, where they just finished some MPGL. Yeah, there you go. Sorry about this. It's filling pause time that's the worst as a solo caster, because right now there's not a whole lot that I can actually discuss. Wah, wah, wah. Huh. We do have the Ogre Club on the courier for Key, a very interesting choice coming out from this Wisp. Potentially going for a Heaven's Halberd. I think that's probably your most likely choice for Key, although it's kind of interesting to see it rushed this early on for the Wisp, especially against heroes that aren't going to be shut down entirely by it. Naga Siren's still going to have illusions that are doing a vast amount of damage, as well as the Radiance Burn. It's still a pretty solid item, and the BKB is probably not going to come out for Naga Siren ever, and Brewmaster also going to have his delayed by quite some time, so we're probably not going to see either of those choices coming out. It'll be relevant through a large portion of this game, and also just tanking up the Wisp is never a bad thing, keeping that little light bulb alive as Timbersaw is going to reconnect as we go into the game. Okay, we can go. HOG are already into the game. We are going to happen upon as Excalibur is going to back off after farming that camp. Currently going to break the tether with Key, but it's going to go off of cooldown, so it doesn't actually matter. The 18-minute rune is going to come pretty quickly, although maybe not quickly enough. Excalibur's Academ Scepter is going to be very quick in coming, as 2,500 gold almost has it finished. Still farming incredibly well. Rubik has been quietly farming up inside his own jungle, now getting a Blink Dagger at a very respectable time for support Rubik. Despite not having the Arcane Boots, mana might be a bit of a difficulty, although stealing the Ravage is going to be a lot more likely coming out from that Rubik. Yep, I don't know. I'm pretty curious as to why Bened plus 5 aren't fighting. Then again, you have a Naga Siren that wants to continue farming pretty effectively. This is very passive despite having about a kill per minute. Smoke coming out from Zero as well as Nemoranios is going to change that as they swap into the Viper Vault with the Magic Missile and now look for the Gush Ancient Apparition Ice Blast is going to come through, probably not even necessary, as it does secure the kill, but isn't going to make a lick of difference. Although a little bit more damage in the Ancient Apparition's pocket is never a bad thing. Getting close to that Aghanim Scepter for him is going to be wonderful for Blacks, although it's just a distant dream. For the third time in a row, they're going to find themselves a kill on the Viper, and you can see that bounty change working wonders. 1,000 gold going the way of Bened plus 5, and the Viper losing 300. It's not going to be too slow until Bened plus 5 are going to be in a fighting shape. We have an Aquila picked up by the Naga Siren. I don't like this choice. Wait, is that for IDFC? Yeah, it is. Not a huge fan of this choice. I think it's just not that great as far as an item. at this point in the game. Would have been wonderful in the laning phase, but I think just going for your Yasha or similar items would have been better. As in mid, they're going to find a pick off on SLHZ. Similar story to what happened to the Viper, just caught out between too many enemy heroes. HOG getting a little too comfortable across the map, and just like that, another 1,000 gold pickoff going the way of Bennett +5. This time not in the hands of the Naga Siren, which is unfortunate, but still catching up admirably. And while the bleeding is going to be stopped, and now slowly it's going to go in the favor of Bennett +5. If you look, it pretty much flatlined. A lot of it has to do with the pause, but even if you ignore that literal flatline, it's still going to be a pretty good situation for Bennett +5 to be in. Excalibur has its Aghanim Scepter, and in and of itself, it's not the most scary item, although it's going to accelerate the farm of the Tiny by quite a bit, especially since he's been able to snag a couple of stacks for himself, and he's going to be cleaving those buildings very hard. Tiny's next item, not sure what it's going to be. BKB might be a necessity, and I'd like to see Excalibur go for that, although it makes the interaction with Wisp a little bit wonky. It's still pretty solid. Maybe just something to hit harder, an Assault Cuirass, maybe a Manta style even, if he wants to fully commit to the split pushing. Timbersaw with his Bloodstone charges are not in the greatest position now, as he has lost 3 of them in the recent pickoff in mid, and hasn't put that Bloodstone to great work. Naga Siren, the illusions are not very tanky at this moment. The stats coming out from Naga are fairly lackluster, but still IDFC farming very well, and will continue to do so. 6 CS a minute is definitely a great place to be in. Vengeful Spirit is going to pick up the drums, and we're going to have, I believe, 3 completed inside this game. At least 1 for each team. The Viper's next item choice is yet to be determined, as sitting on 2,300 gold, Viper could be going for either of the Ogre Club items that you usually see on the Viper. Aghanim Scepter is probably my preferred choice for this Viper, but he hasn't picked up the point booster, and usually you'd see that. Excalibur, after weakening up the stack, Slash Strike is going to back off and give this farm the way of the Tiny, and well, Tiny's farming up an absolute storm. 1,600 gold, Excalibur is also going to be working towards this next item, and I don't know, it feels like this game is passive. The pickoffs are pretty much all where it's been. The 5-on-5 team fight from Bennett +5 is not happening at all. We do have the Tidehunter picking up his mechanism for his team, although no Arcane Boots has enough gold to get that. Maybe just saving up for the Blink Dagger and trusting he'll have enough mana. Mechanism as well as Ravage is going to completely deplete him, however, and that could be problematic as the Ancient Apparition Ice Blast thrown up towards top onto Slash Strike. The Gush also going to come through. They swap him. Vengeful Spirit, Magic Missile going to come through. The Vengeful Spirit is going to be tagged by a Viper Strike and might secure her death as a moment is rotating in. He's in a very sketchy engagement as the Magic Missile is not going to be stolen. It's a wave of turret. They have enough damage. They don't. Jabane 0 escaping. His Relocate comes top. Not going to connect with any disables, however, and everybody's going to make it up free from the side of Bennett +5, as well as drawing out the Relocate. Yet another 1,000 gold or so swing going in the favor of Bennett +5. Meanwhile, the Naga Siren farming up at the best of her ability is going to be getting those items very fast. 2,000 gold now in IDFC, presumably towards Yasha, Boots of Travel. Whatever it is, it's going to either make her hit harder or just make her a more potent split-pushing threat. It is going to be this bots, just the standard Naga Siren build from here on out, I would assume. Brewmaster, speaking of Aghanim Scepter, the Scepters, there have been quite a lot this game, or at least a lot of heroes saving up for them. We almost have it completed on the Brew, 600 gold before he has that completed. And that's going to be that completed for Johnny Krypton in just a couple more minutes. Split is available, and they might look to go aggressive. We still haven't seen the Ravage committed. Yeah, I'd like to see this Tidehunter get the Arcane Boots. I don't think there's a way that he's going to be able to use all of his spells as well as mech if he doesn't go for it. As nice as Blink is, you have the Blink Initiation coming out for the Brewmaster as well as a Naga Siren song to set up for Ravage, and even without setup, Ravage is still a pretty reliable way to disable heroes as the AoE is just so large. It's probably going to be a blink for Nemoranios. If his mana management is on point, it definitely could work out, especially if he has some Arcane Boots being popped by the rest of his teammates. But then again, we don't have any pairs of them, so yeah, I think getting the Mana Boots is the best bet for him. It is going to be a Soul Cuirass next for Tiny, or at the very least a Hyperstone. He's actually getting very close to it. Naga Siren farms incredibly fast with Radiance, but it's not really compared to Excalibur's farm throughout these jungles. A lot of help coming out from his supports and stacking as well as softening them up and moving him from camp to camp with the extra movement speed, but somehow Tiny's out farming a Naga Siren. Eta is going to be the choice of item for SLHZ, going to be very helpful in slowing down these heroes. Again, nobody's going to be building a BKB, and that slow is going to maintain its relevancy. Also tanking him up, giving him more Intelligence on top of it. SLHC is going to be happy with this item, although I would have liked to see maybe an Aghanim Scepter rush a little bit more, or potentially just a Shiva's Guard, a little bit more conventional item pickup for your Timber Saw. Excalibur farming up an Ancient stack. It's only a double stack, but with the overcharge, this Tiny just bops all of those creeps down so quickly. Has enough gold, or is getting dangerously close to enough gold for his Assault Cuirass. Yeah, the rest of his team is grouping up around him. We're just waiting for this Tiny as well as Naga Siren to reach critical mass before teams actually want to play aggressively. Assault Cuirass on the Tiny is going to make these tier 2 tower pushes coming out from HOG a lot easier. You're still dealing with the split pushing Naga Siren. The smoke comes out from the Radiant team and looks like they're going to bump into a Moment. A Moment is probably going to die, but he gets the vision on them first and blinks away towards the left. Oh, Tiny going to be defensively swapped, or rather aggressively swapped in the rest of the enemy team. Excalibur picked off. He thought there weren't that many heroes, and he was wrong. There is going to be relocate coming out from the Wisp, although there's no buyback from the Tiny. I'm not sure where the Wisp is actually going. Looks like Wisp is just going to end up giving away its own life here. As the Icy Vortex dropped down, as well as the Boulder Toss potentially, Key is actually going to survive with some backup from the Timber Saw. Something stolen Primal Split available for the Rubik. He's going to have that to go onto Blacks. He's going to Boulder Toss him up, and with the Timber Saw dropping the Chakram through, Blacks is going to fall. TP attempt coming out from Nemeranios. Throw him up in the air. They're not going to throw him up in the air as the Wind Panda was off to the side getting IDFC. The song's going to be forced out in Slash Strike with the BKB. It's already going to wear off. However, the Brewmaster minions don't actually care about that song, and in the air with the Naga Siren, this could be a huge pickoff. Despite losing her Tiny at the beginning of this is going to go well for HOG after cleaning up that Naga, and now into the Roshan pit they're going to go. Naga Siren pickoff at the very end is going to be reflected in this last change. If you're going to lose your Tiny, get something out of it, and they definitely did. The Tiny bit off more than he can chew, but still has an Assault Cuirass to work with. It's going to lose quite a bit of gold from that death. It's still worth it by all stretch of the imagination, especially if they can get the Aegis off of this Roshan, making the tier 2 tower pushes that much easier. Chakram's going to be doing some damage to Roche, as Timber Saw is... where is Timber Saw actually? He is tanking inside the pit. It's going to be an Aegis towards Excalibur, and these tier 2 towers are probably going to be the next item on HOG's list. A Moment's going to be tagged with an Ancient Apparition Ice Blast. That shouldn't take him down, but it isn't going to be very comfortable. Rubik is going to be freezing up in top lane, and well, it's going to be fine. Nobody else has come up there to do the damage. No Blink Thunderclap or potentially Blink Gush. Tidehunter still saving up for his own Blink Dagger. Ravage hasn't been very impactful at all this game. Nemeranios is being a little bit too conservative with that spell, I feel. They could have gotten a couple more kills if he'd been a little bit more liberal with it. Jabane Zero and company are scouting out SLHZ, especially since Naga Siren Radiant Solution is going to be on his tail. Doesn't do that much damage, and Whirling Death is all that they need to clean that one up, but Excalibur's just going to continue farming with this Aegis. You're still fighting into Brewmaster split as well as Tidehunter Ravage. They do have a split of their own on the Rubik. It's going to come off a cooldown on 10 seconds and still be available for about a minute or so. So that's a window that HOG are going to have a teamfight advantage, I would say. Despite not having a BKB on the Tiny to block that Ravage, they still have a split of their own to even up the field. And Naga Siren's not really fighting ready. She has the Boots of Travel as well as Yasha, which are great items, but these illusions just get mopped up too quickly. 1200 HP on the Naga Siren herself, she's also going to fall if she gets caught out. So IDFC is more or less just going to be avoiding the fights. There might be a Radiance Illusion for a little bit in the team fight, but it's not going to do that much damage. Blink Dagger picked up by the Tidehunter. Nemeranios probably going to find a better Ravage, but as of now, they've been pretty lackluster. Up in top, link forward by Johnny Krypton going on Excalibur. As the Aegis is already pretty darn tanky. Ancient Apparition Ice Blast also going to land through. Magic Missile are committing a lot. This Excalibur in the relocated way is going to keep him completely safe as the Naga Siren gets picked off down towards bottom with the split from the Rubik, as well as probably just a Blink Lift initiation into the Primal Split, and then the Timber Saw burst damage was enough. Naga Siren does not have that Wisp to bail her out of trouble, and that's going to cost them a kill on their carry. A lot of gold going the way of HOG, but most importantly, time that Naga Siren's not spent farming, as well as time where the Naga Siren's still going to be irrelevant. Another tower push probably going to come out from HOG. They won't have split for this, but then again, I'm not sure if it matters. There is going to be a top tower that's denied by the Vengeful Spirit, some economic damage being done. However, the map control is going to HOG, and a Tiny Wisp with map control is a scary Tiny Wisp. The gold graph is going to start going in the favor of HOG now as we see a split in the mid lane. Although the BKB comes up from Slash Strike, he's able to man fight pretty effectively, although with too many heroes right-clicking down, I think he's going to die, but not before getting Jabane Zero down. Mech's going to keep Jabane Zero pretty healthy. One more auto attack from Slash Strike is all that it's going to take. A Moment lifting up. Slash Strike still surviving throughout all this, but not for long. Anchor Smash is going to seal the deal on the Viper. A Moment stealing Anchor Smash of his own. There's no relocate, but on the backlines, they have a Timber Saw munching through Blacks. Blacks is going to fall as the Chakram comes through. Io actually getting it with the last auto attack. They have a Song onto 3. Excalibur's actually going to be able to walk through, and they don't commit the Ravage. There's no mana on your Tidehunter for Ravage. And honestly, this is kind of what I've been talking about throughout the rest of it. He doesn't have enough mana to get all of his crap off during the team fights. If he gushes once, he's just in such a pickle. He needs Arcane Boots. The bottle's nice for sustain in lane to get those anchor smashes off, but in the middle of a team fight, you need that instant burst mana and the extra mana pool. The tier 2 tower in mid is more or less going to be forfeit as Excalibur's just beating it to death with his Crystal Tree, and that's going to be all of the tier 2 towers down on the side of Bennett plus 5, and even though they have a Naga Siren that has some farm, it's not enough. You're staring down the barrel of a Tiny that has a big item on top of what the Naga Siren has, and it's getting close to his next one. Whatever it may be, I think BKB is your safest bet for Excalibur. With the BKB, he has nothing to fear from Bennett plus 5. Naga Siren's damage that's physical is very lackluster. Her hero hits for less than 200. Tiny with 25 armor actually doesn't care about that, and negating the Radiance illusion as well as just bopping, or Radiance burn, as well as just bopping the illusions down. Tiny with the BKB gives no hoots. Excalibur going to continue farming up a Storm, and this is a scary place. It's actually not going to be a Heaven's Halberd for Io. As nice as it is to have the BKB on your Tiny, it's going to be pretty nice to have it on your Wisp as well. Securing that he's able to constantly have the overcharge as well as Tether going the way of the Tiny, as well as being able to get relocate off without a hitch. Vengeful Spirit Swap could cancel it if they're channeling it, but Key's positioning has been very good this game, and I don't think that's going to be the case. Excalibur stopping Naga Siren from farming by cleaning up 2 of her illusions. IDFC needs more. It's time for Bennett plus 5 to drag out this game, but even if they drag it out, you're still going up against a Tiny, and as scary as Naga Siren is in the late game, I think Tiny is probably a little bit scarier. There is going to be ward inside the enemy base coming out from HOG. VKB's the choice from Excalibur, sending that to himself on the courier. He's going to be out of his Aegis fairly soon, but for now they're still going to have it available. Let's see what the timer is going to be. Still a minute. Plenty of time for them to take the tier 3 tower, maybe even more. Naga Siren illusions mopped up in bottom as they go onto Excalibur, potentially looking for Ravage. They're not going to commit it. The Aegis is actually going to expire. So I misread the timer, sorry about that. The relocate is going to give up the Wisp's life, but as I said in the draft, the support's there to save their carry, and if it costs you your life, that stinks. Wisp has the BKB and potentially TP. No, too much damage. Not even going to use it. It would have been a 10-second BKB and probably not worth it anyway. But Naga Siren does get the mega kill streak, so that's going to be your completed Manta Style on IDFC, so maybe it would have been worth it in hindsight. Manta Style now on IDFC is actually becoming relevant as a hero, but still needs a heart and butterfly on top of this to really be scary. It's not enough. Ancient Apparition Aghanims is going to be a bigger leap of power for Bennett plus 5, I feel, than the Manta Style on Naga Siren. Is now that Ancient Apparition Ice Blast is actually going to be a force to be reckoned with from for HOG. I don't know. It's still looking great for them. We are going to have a completed Aghanim Scepter on SLHC, and it's nice. As that Aghanim Scepter is on the Ancient Apparition, SLHZ's is also going to be pretty huge. The double Chakram's ridiculous. I don't think the Atos was really warranted this game. It helped in some kills, but I don't think it was anything they could have gotten without it. But now it's online, and it's irrelevant what those earlier kills did, is now the Timbersaw is pretty darn tanky. 2500 HP with the items that he has completed up, and all of the mana in the world, 9 Bloodstone charges is plenty to sustain those double Chakrams throughout a team fight. Maybe not all the time, but enough of the time to really put the screws to Bennett plus 5, especially since all of their cores are melee. Timbersaw's going to have a field day in the next couple of engagements. Well, we're going to see the Atos used down in bottom lane as they find themselves Jabane 0. The relocate is not going to be there as they jump in with the Brewmaster Split as well as Ravage, but they're all BKB. The Slash Strike as well as Tiny don't actually care. IDFC trying to TP out. Oh, they're not able to get the kill before the TP succeeds as Excalibur's not there to beat them down. The Brewmaster minions aren't going to be too safe. He's still man-fighting up against them. They don't have enough damage here, but once the Brewmaster comes back in, he's more or less dead. Slash Strike and company are going to bring him down as Excalibur survives with very low HP. He's going to cancel out TP and then meet up with the Wisp, who does have a couple bottle charges as well as urn charges as well as tranquil boots to keep Excalibur in fighting shape. It's going to take a long time before Excalibur is back at full, mostly because he just has a ridiculous amount of HP. It's sad that they didn't get the Naga Siren kill, but still HOG finding themselves a win. 3 for 1, can't really ask for much more. Their BKBs are going to be on cooldown for this next engagement, but then again, Split and Ravage are also going to suffer the same fate, and without those two tools, HOG don't care that their BKBs aren't available. 2-2 Chopper Bottom is going to be put under a lot of pressure as the Ato is thrown onto Blacks. They're going to throw Blacks back towards Jabane 0. The toss was a little bit ambitious from Excalibur, and now he's caught out by the net deep behind enemy lines. Excalibur is going to lose his life and a lot of gold going the way of the enemy team. Ooh, questionable coming out from Excalibur there. Naga Siren rating it's turned off currently. I'd like to see her turn that back on. Eventually, and that's going to go the way of Slash Strike, but disjointed nicely from the Manta style. It's a fairly short window in order to do so, so well played from Slash Strike. Even if it didn't disjoint it, it's definitely worth the shot. Yeah, Tiny dying there is unfortunate for HOG, but it's nothing they can't overcome. This Naga Siren's still getting items, though. Their high ground isn't broken just yet, and you can't underestimate a Naga Siren that gets 6-slotted. Although for the next 10 minutes or so, it's going to be HOG, their Kings of Court, as long as they don't go in that deep. There is no reason that your Tiny should be diving past the tier 3 towers that aggressively without any team backup. They just left him for dead, which I think is the right choice for HOG. The Wisp might have been able to assist a little bit, but probably would have just given away his own life. Yep, Naga Siren's next item of choice, I believe that's Butterfly. No, it's just going to be the Reaver towards the heart of the Naga Siren. Yeah, tanking up for those illusions so they don't instantly die, but honestly, I'm not sure a Heart's going to do that. When you have a Timbersaw dropping Whirling Deaths, double Chakrams, as well as a Tiny cleaving through, I'm not sure that matters. They lift up some of these illusions, and they're annoying for sure. They'll probably get this tier 1 tower, at least put into deny range. But then again, it might just be denied, and that's going to be some economic damage done by HOG. And gold up in Ed +5 really would have liked to have in their pockets. Roshan is available to be taken again. It has been scouted out, I believe, by HOG. They might consider that being the next place to fight, but they're fighting in the Roshan pit up against the Naga Siren, Tidehunter, Brewmaster, Ancient Apparition. A lot of spells for them to use inside the pit, and pause gaming continues. As we are going to have Vengeful Spirit pause this time. Both teams are just kind of trading off turns as far as who's going to disconnect and who's going to pause. Ooh, this could be some time to take a look at what's happening in the chat and make sure that everything's working out. Let's see. Well, there is going to be a reconnect here, and we are going to have Mike back in here for game number 2 as soon as that's available. So thanks for sticking around in the chat while we're at it, as well as for posting back over. We're going to have Tidehunter back into this game, and hopefully he will get completely back into this game. And we'll be able to unpause. G's comes out from HOG, and Bennett +5. Let's see if they are ready to go. And they are. So the unpause is going to come through. It's, I don't know, a Naga Siren game. The action is isolated. There's a couple of little bursts of action, but still both teams are just kind of waiting for those big items to come online. Excalibur's getting closer to being 6-slotted himself. Presumably his next item is Manta Style and Daedalus, something along those lines, potentially just going for Heart. Timbersaw is going to be Spider-Manning through, going to scout out the Roshan pit, maybe not, I think they've already scouted out. Is BKB going to be used in mid by Slash Strike? They lift up the Tidehunter, he does have the Ravage available, they drop him straight back down. The Viper Strike going the way of Johnny. It's going to disjoint the Avalanche coming out from the Primal Split. Excalibur with the BKB on doesn't actually care about these Brilliants. Timbersaw is going very aggressively into the other supports. However, he cares a little bit more than the Tiny does. Going to be freezed up. There's going to be a Ravage. Nicely timed, although they throw up the Tiny into the air. A little bit of miscommunication. Or not, Nemorenios being focused down. The Timbersaw is doing a lot of damage. It's the Song of Siren. I'm going to delay things. Nemorenios survives the poison damage. And everybody's caught out. They don't have anything to throw in there. The Ravage would have been beautiful if they'd had saved it, but it's not going to happen. It's just going to be a 1-for-0 exchange. A lot of ultimates being expended. HOG, despite losing the Rubik, this is go time for Roshan. The Song of Siren is going to be up fast, but it's not going to be up fast enough as we just watch this Roche get completely obliterated. Ancient Apparition, Ice Blast is going to jump in the pit and be a nuisance for HOG, but they still have plenty of damage in order to go through this. Oh, jump in from Johnny Krypton. He's looking for anything. He's going to be tossed in the air, drops to half damage. Magic Missile onto Excalibur. Roshan is still standing as Nemorenios is being bashed down by Roche. The Wisp is going to lose his life, as is the Tiny. Nemorenios gets double kill. Buyback from the Tiny. The Aegis is going to be secured by the Viper. He's going to lose it immediately, however, as IDFC is inside the Roshan pit. Probably going to back off, however. SLHC is on the sidelines. 13 Bloodstone charges. Aegis is up. The Naga Siren, as TPs go away from the Vengeful Spirit, they might be able to pursue anything. Let's see, Timber Chain's not going to be thrown out. Excalibur buys back for this. Is it going to be worth it? Let's see, I don't think so. Ancient Apparition Ice Blast lands onto nothing. Does apply the debuff of Slash Strike, but they're not fighting, so it doesn't matter much. Just like that, Naga Siren is now the king of the court. has the completed Heart of Trask flying onto the courier, 3,000 or 300 gold on top of it. And, well, Tiny, after spending his buyback, is going to be stymied in the progression of his items. The Nagasaran is going to be completely solo versus these cores coming out from HOG. The Timbersaw and Viper's damage is a lot more significant than that coming out from the Tidehunter as well as the Brewmaster. The Tide and Brew offer a little bit of utility, especially in the mischance, as well as the reduced damage on the Tiny. A lot of its damage is base damage, so if you are able to get the Anchor Smash off as well as the Drunken Haze, Tiny's impact in the teamfight is going to be completely limited. Well, there you have it. Rubik on a pretty aggressive mission in the enemy side of the woods, but will be able to blink over into the river area and be fine. He's going to get some deep wards. I'm not sure how much that's actually going to impact things. His double chakram does a little bit of damage to IDFC, but he doesn't really care, as he does have the heart to get that little bit of extra regen. So yeah, harass negligible coming out from SLHC, but with the Bloodstone, the mana expend isn't really that important either. Into mid, Bennett +5 are going to go with Ravage, as well as all of their other cooldowns available. Jermaine 0 4-staffing forward, looking for a swapper and anything, not going to find it. The double chakrams are going to come back to SLHC, destroying some trees on the sidelines, which may or may not be relevant. Another lull in the action. Ancient Apparition is going to be completing up his own Force Staff, although he doesn't have it completed yet, does have the two major components towards it. Tiny, pushing out top, will be able to put no damage on the tier 2 towers that was already taken previously. All of the tier 2s on the side of Bennett +5 have dropped, and none on the side of HOG. If we take a look at the graphs, the lead coming out from HOG is more or less stagnated at that 10,000 gold per minute, or not gold per minute, but rather gold mark. So HOG's lead is negligible at this point. Experience is a little bit more favorable, but still 10,000 the lead there. It's still anybody's game. The team fights Bennett +5 have been able to take have been more or less even, and if this was 6.82, the original patch, and not B, the comeback mechanic would have been huge for Bennett +5 if they get those pickoffs on the Viper, Tiny, and this might be a completely different game, but this feels a lot more balanced. They're being rewarded for winning the team fights when they're behind, but not rewarded by too much. Nagasaran going to be close to her next item. Butterfly or Diffusal, I think, is the choice here. I'd prefer Butterfly and then get, like, Daedalus as your last item, or maybe even Abyssal. Daedalus is probably your best bet. Group up coming out from Bennett +5 up in the top line or lane. Not going to find anybody, however, and they're not smoked up. They're just going to put a little bit of pressure here. The Tiny continues to farm up Excalibur, also working towards his next item, but 1,300 gold isn't going to cut the cake. Nowhere close towards his next big jump of power. No, it's a very interesting game to watch. It's all of the eggs in the Bennett +5 have been put into this Nagasaran, and they want this Naga date huge, and she is. If HOG are able to hold this out 20 minutes more, they're going to be in a really good spot, as the Viper still has plenty of room to grow with only the BKB, Mantis style, as well as Drums Aquila on his person. It's negligible. Slash Strike could be building into more damage, maybe some more utility with Agnum Scepter. Whereas Bennett +5's cores don't really scale that incredibly well. Brewmaster having a Shiva is wonderful for your team and all, but the Brewmaster split doesn't do much, especially when Tiny gets his next item. If it's one that lets him hit harder, he'll just be able to cleave through those Brewlings throughout the duration of the split and do very little. SLHZ farming up the enemy jungle with his double chakrams, misses the Timber Chain, but will be able to secure up this Satyr Tormentor. Nonetheless, with the Bloodstone at 13 charges, he's able to do that as we have some action up on top. Slash Strike getting caught out again. Kind of the story of this game, disjoints the net again with the Mantis style, but the swap is not going to be so disjointed. The BKB is going to wear off, and now he needs to be careful. Javain 0 is going to drop to the Timbersaw, as well as Slash Strike getting the last hit with the poison. Brewmaster split has been committed as the BKB comes out from the Tiny. He's going to cleave down the Ancient Apparition incredibly fast. He doesn't actually care about the Nagasaran songs. BKB still persists from Excalibur, cleaving through these Brewmaster minions. It's going to be pretty solid as Tiny is going to get the kill on the Tidehunter, I believe, which is to cleave. Brewmaster going to come back into himself, gets slap up before he dies, but the cancel of the Blink Dagger coming out from the Chakram, he's going to die, and 4 for nil. Going to be exchanges. Slash Strike survives throughout the entirety of that. I thought he'd be caught out a lot more effectively, but dominating spree. And yeah, huge swing this way of HOG. Nagasaran, luckily enough for them, does not die and will be close to that Butterfly. So in that sense, it's still okay for Bennett +5. It could have gone a lot worse. But now Tiny actually has some gold in his pocket and is going to be working towards his next item, whatever it might be. I'd like to see an MKB from Excalibur at this point. As nice as your Daedalus would be. For Excalibur, the MKB is going to be crucial when you're dealing with the Nagasaran getting a Butterfly next, or at least presumably a Butterfly next. As well as the mischance from the Brewmaster. Honestly, it probably should have been on the docket a little bit earlier. than just now. Ancient Personal Ice Blast flies through, drops the buff onto Excalibur, but not much more. The 2-3 tower push is going to come out from them with no big ultimates from Bennett +5. It's a lot easier for them to fight through. These Nagasar illusions are annoying, but a chakra and a couple bops from the tree of Excalibur is all they'll need to clean that one up. It's going to keep the creep wave push a little bit, but it's not enough. They can't actually get outside of the base. And there you go. Chakram drop by SLHC. Needs to be a little bit more conservative with his Chakrams right now, as his Bloodstone charges aren't enough to allow him to continuously spam it out, but now he has enough mana to do so. 2-3 tower is going to be pressured. The Naga Siren's not in any of the other lanes pushing with her illusions, as she committed both of those to mid. Ancient Apparition Ice Blast is going to be good. Lands onto 3 heroes. Actually doesn't land onto Excalibur, it seems. He'll barely survive that one. It's going to be enough to repel HOG, but it's not going to be enough to repel them forever. Down in the bottom, Tiny goes, but with the Wisp relocate available, he's not actually far from the enemy team. Diffusal Blade, the choice from Naga Siren, just feeling she needs a little bit more damage. I would have liked to see the Butterfly a little bit more. It's still not a bad item, and the Purge is nice and all. Yeah, we'll see. Naga Siren needs to make something happen now. She's getting very close to being capped out. The Butterfly is going to be nice on top of this, but for all intents and purposes, she's at her peak, whereas Excalibur has a little bit more room to grow. But if he gets caught out, this could be huge. Blinks galore onto him with Nemoranios as well as Johnny Krypton. He throws Nemoranios up in the air, and there's the Stolen Ravage coming out from a moment, but it's not enough to save the Tiny. The relocate was not there from the Wisp. I would have thought that he'd be closer. Bounty Rune's secured by a moment, but he's going to be blunked upon by Johnny Krypton as well as Nemoranios, trying for the TP out, not going to be successful. Naga Siren getting a kill, and that was very much needed coming out from Bennett +5. They're going to get a huge gold swing in their favor, only getting 2 kills, but it's going to be similar to the win up in top. Now Naga Siren getting close towards their next item. Wisp is going to get a Vladimir's Offering. It's a little overdue. I probably would have liked the Vlads faster than the BKB. Maybe get the BKB late, but now the BKB is going to be pretty delayed. Tier 3 tower in mid is going to be pressured by Bennett +5. They're not as fast as Tiny pushing, but with all these illusions that are still working hard since Tiny is not bought back yet. Tier 3 tower is going to be dropped half before it gets glyphed up. Chakrams on the ground are going to delay this, as well as the Wisp Balls, but it's not enough. Nagastar illusions are still working out as Tier 3, and the Tier 3 is going to fall. They're trying to save this buyback on the Tiny, and they just can't do it. Or can they? Let's see. John Krypton's going to be double slowed up, Atos as well as a double Chakram, but IDFC doesn't care. Goes onto the range barracks. He's going to take a little bit of damage blinking for Johnny Krypton. He has the split. He's going to use the split, looking for the jump onto the Viper. Not going to find it as the BKB comes out from him, but they just focus down the range barracks. It looks like they're going to find him. Jabane Zero's low on the backline since Brewmaster minions are being right-clicked down, but have they decided a poor decision, HOG? Have they hung onto this buyback from the Tiny for too long? They clear up the creep wave and no barracks are going to fall yet, but it's only a matter of time. Tiny's going to be back. It's going to be a lot riskier for them to do so. But this barracks in mid is going to be a lot easier for them to take. If they fully committed to the range barracks or fully committed to the melee barracks, it would have been a clean sweep for them, and I think that would have been better for Bennett +5. Well, it definitely would have been better, but they decide against it, and that's going to save Tiny his buyback as well as HOG their rack. So in that sense, it could have gotten a lot worse for them. Tiny is going to be forced to save for buyback, so he's not able to get his next item, and he's been sitting on the same items for thereabouts 20 minutes or so. Yep. Well, back to the passivity that we've seen or gotten pretty used to. Tide Hunter Ravage is online. Brewmaster Split is going to be online in 30 seconds, and then we might see a fight, but HOG aren't going to be keen on taking it. Naga Siren could be 6-slotted if she wanted to. We'll probably save her buyback before completing anything, but sell that. Aquila, and then buy the Eagle Song. You can upgrade the Diffusal after that, but honestly, this is Naga Siren at her finest. Sending the courier out to the secret shop. Going to be that Eagle Song finished. The courier is going to be in a risky spot, but I don't think it's going to be picked off. But yeah, the little demon is going to be one on its way towards picking up that Eagle Song, and we'll be fine. Roshan is going to be spawning very quickly. Although it's not the fastest Roshan timer, it's not too far out, and that's probably where we're going to see the next big engagement. Scotty's the choice for the Viper, going to be tanking up quite a bit with this. It doesn't stack directly with Poison Attack, but the slows are going to be pretty insane if he alternates the orbs, but I'm not sure if I like it. It's not bad by any means, but I think there's items that could have been better. Honestly, Butterfly for him could have been just as good. Adding that extra bit of damage would have been nice. The Tiny is hard hitting it all, but it's not enough to carry this entire thing on his back. Just a couple of moves from HOG are getting very heavily punished. This Naga Siren is at the top of the net worth, and despite running with the 10,000 advantage for HOG, it doesn't feel like it. And honestly, it's not supposed to. You have a Naga Siren that's 6-slotted. If Bennett plus 5 aren't able to do anything with this Naga Siren, they're going to be in a lot of trouble, but their advantage in the team fights is pretty secured, especially since the BKBs are wearing very thin for HOG, and there's no way to refresh those now. 7 seconds on the Tiny is all he's going to have. I believe that's 5 seconds on the Viper, and Ios is also going to be wearing pretty thin at 8 seconds. Actually, Ios is looking pretty good. He hasn't used it very much at all. Yep. Okay, so we're sitting here waiting for the Tiny, and there's your Butterfly on the Naga Siren. So officially, it is 6-slotted Naga. Upgraded Diffusal, maybe replace that Radiance late game with a Daedalus Abyssal Blade, something along the sorts. Replace the Diffusal super late game, get a Courier with a Refresher Necronomicon. But no, IDFC is 6-slotted. The Pika power, even when you spend that much money for those big ticket items, doesn't get much better than this. 3000 HP on the Naga Siren, going to be a pain to deal with her, and a pain to deal with her illusions as well. Yep, well, it is going to be Timbersaw potentially getting caught out. The swap comes out from JDL3. They're going to stun up SLHC, and he does have a lot of Bloodstone charges. He is just going to straight up suicide back in 24 seconds. Not a terrible loss for HOG, although it is still going to put the Timbersaw at a much more moderate amount of Bloodstone charges at 11. So it's a loss for them, but it could have gone a whole heck of a lot worse. If that was any other hero that gets caught out, maybe bar the Wisp with his Tiny partner, it would have been a pretty clean sweep. Excalibur is having some difficulty with his illusions, especially since he can't hit them. He needs an MKB. Excalibur, I'd like to see him just get that damage, but this is a Tiny. He should not have this much trouble with these illusions. The mischance is working wonders, and they also have 3000 HP. The creep wave's going to die, and there's nothing they can do about it. In fact, the Wisp is getting soloed. He's going to be forced to relocate away. Yeah, it's not a happy place. He wasn't forced to use the BKB, but that's relocate down for a minute. Not the biggest cooldown to waste, but yeah, there's your MKB on Excalibur. Much needed pickup for him. Is it enough? I don't know. He really needs to replace those drums and get another item on top of it. It's just not great. Roshan going to the next objective for Blended plus 5. They can't really give IDFC the Aegis. Maybe they can if he drops the Diffusal Blade or switches out the Radiance with a Courier, but honestly doesn't want to do so. They'll probably give it to the likes of the Brewmaster. We might see a fight break out. Right now, both teams are very spread out across the map. SLHC going to drop a Chakram into the pit and be a nuisance, but IDFC doesn't care. I don't know, kind of the same story that we've been seeing. Now he kind of cares with the 2 Chakrams going on inside the pit. And Roshan is still standing strong. SLHC also has decent amount of mana as JDL3 going to be focused down by the attack of the Viper. It's not enough, however, the BKB is going to be spent to get the split off on the Brewmaster, and that's all that matters. The song comes out from the Naga Siren cancelled, as now they focus down Excalibur. He's going to be hit with the Magic Missile. Now also follow-up stun is going to be there. That's going to be Tiny down for good. No buyback available. It's on the backline, so Wisp is being focused down, but now they're chasing the rest of the heroes from HOG. There is going to be an Ancient Apparition dying from SLHZ. He's going to be able to get that kill in the support, but now in a bit of a pickle here as the Magic Missile comes out. IDFC is there running through double Chakrams. It's pretty scary for him. Also eats a lot of damage. It's double kill for SLHZ. He's running around like a boss. Drop that Magic Wand, get that gem. He can't really do it, but there's a Tidehunter there. He doesn't have a lot of mana to speak of, but it might be enough to get this kill on Nemoranios. It is going to be, though, and JDL3 is going to fall. Wicked 6 streak for SLHZ. They could not do anything about this Timbersaw. I didn't see how the Naga Siren died, but she died on the backlines to the Viper, as well as the Rubik and Wisp. I thought that would go a lot better for Bennett plus 5. They get the kill on the Tiny very early on in the fight. Their split was going strong, but it didn't matter. Timbersaw is the real MVP. SLHZ now an absolute tank. Has the cheese available for him, probably not going to spend it, but he's getting dangerously close to being 6-slide. If he had a heart, just imagine how they're going to deal with Bennett plus 5 are going to deal with this Timber. How can they actually kill him with upwards of 30-40 armor, 70% physical damage resist? The damage coming out for Naga Siren doesn't matter. Magic damage is nice and all, but it's not enough, especially when he can pump out the vast amount of damage that he has. With the double Chakram as well as Timber Chain, Whirling Death in that, it's pretty ridiculous. Well, Middle lane is pushing in a storm. Viper behind that one. They have buybacks available and probably not going to be forced to spend that. HFers is going to have difficulty counter pushing this one out. But it'll be able to do enough. The Viper Illusion is going to be a nuisance. Although it's not going to get the Scotty slow. It's going to do a little bit of corrosive skin damage, I suppose. There you have it. HOG. The Tiny might just be a red herring. It's the Timbersaw that they need to do something about. I thought he died, but he just survived for so long. Reactive Armor is a good spell. What can I say? 5,000 gold now on the Timbersaw. He can go for whatever the heck he wants to go for. He might consider replacing the Atos eventually with the likes of a Scythe, get a heart as well. But after that, this Timbersaw is going to be doing a lot of work. Usually Timbersaw scales off at this point in the game, but the double Chakram, I kind of underestimated the change. I always thought it was good, but apparently it's really good. MKB on the Viper now is actually going to be a right-clicking threat. I'd like to see Viper get a Daedalus after this, just so they have as much oomph as they can get. But yeah, Viper is actually a pretty scary threat to deal with now, and this is where it gets really difficult for Bennett +5, because they've hit their ceiling. Their heroes have scaled to the amount that they can scale. Assault Cuirass Vlad's on the Brewmaster, in theory, can give some nice auras to the Naga Siren. It's not enough. The Brewmaster doesn't do enough alone. Potentially, he could build right-click, Mjolnir, Abyssal Blade, or something along those lines, but it's, again, not going to really do that much. Naga Siren's Illusions don't stand much of a chance to 2 MKB carries of the Tiny as well as the Viper, and neither to the double chakrams of the Timbersaw. They'll be able to clean those up incredibly quickly. It doesn't look like this Naga Siren is 6-slotted. She does upgrade the Diffusal Blade for a little bit of extra agility, but the mana burn is now constant, so that doesn't change much. And honestly, the mana burn doesn't bother HOG that much with BKBs on most of the heroes, as well as the Timbersaw with 16 Bloodstone charges. SLHZ actually doesn't care. Yeah, Naga Siren Illusions will push out this creep wave at the best of their ability. They are pushing into Brewmaster Split as well as Tidehunter Ravage. They have the Tiny and Wisp in reserve if they need to relocate, but right now they're just strangling Bennett +5. Well, they will find themselves a Slash Strike being focused down by the Illusions, but they'll also be killed by the double Chakram, and now onto the barracks they're going to go as the tier 3 tower up on top is also going to fall to the Tiny, and they're just being split pushed to death. Slash Strike is still standing strong, but not for long. Has the Aegis, doesn't really care. Brewmaster Split comes out, but Timberchain going to keep SLHC alive. He has the double Chakrams, and he's being able to maintain these, and these Brewlings are probably just going to die inside the split as Excalibur on the north side of the fight is focused down. Nemerania's trying to go in toward the base that Earth Brewling is going to survive, but only just. Double kill for IDFCs. He gets the Tiny Wisp combo, and SLHZ is going strong. Buyback on the Timbersaw Blacks, not going to look too healthy. He doesn't have a second Chakram to throw, but he has a Whirling Death and a little bit more damage. The second Chakram is all he's going to need. Timberchain's away to the side. Blacks is still surviving on the sidelines. The SLHZ is getting focused down, but he has the cheese, and he's going to be able to go through IDFC. He does have another Whirling Death, and he's just sustaining too well throughout this fight. They look for the Magic Missile. SLHZ is going to be stopped mid-Timberchain animation, but is able to get up to the high ground. Magic Missile stolen, return to Jabane 0. Double Chakram onto Jabane. Jabane might just fall to these Chakrams immediately, and he will. Godlike Spree for SLHZ, and he gets another Bloodstone charge to boot. What do you do about this Timbersaw? They got him low, but he had a cheese. He didn't care. They lose their Tiny and Wisp. It's kind of similar to last fight. They get the barracks, and that's what matters. That's double Raxing. If there is a hero that can defend against double Raxes indefinitely, it is a Naga Siren, or an Ember Spirit that gets Rapier and Battle Fury. For all intents and purposes, I think this is over for Bennett +5. Naga Siren's the only one that's getting more gold, and she can't do anything with it. If that 8,000 gold was going into a secondary carry that could actually utilize it well, maybe there's some hope for them left, but they need HOG to really throw, and by throw, I mean get team wiped twice. Team wipe, and then buyback, and then get team wiped again. Buyback's still available for the Tiny, and despite him dying throughout all these fights, his KDA is actually very lackluster. At 2, 8, and 9, not the KDA you want to see here. Core Tiny having at this point, but SLHZ with a heart now is literally a walking well. He doesn't need to go back to the base ever with 18 Bloodstone charges as well as a heart. He's actually going to be regenerating faster than most of the heroes would inside the well. Yeah. Boots of Travel also on the Timbersaw, doesn't need that TP slot, can split push to his heart's content. They haven't lost their barracks in mid, and the melee barracks have completely regen up despite losing a tier 3 tower very early on. SLHC is going to have the time of his life. The heart regen is going to be stopped for a couple of seconds as the Ancient Apparition Ice Blast lands onto SLHC. Doesn't matter, they're not fighting. Viper pushing out bottom with the help of a moment.
Dire's top
it's not great. Timbersaw pauses the game, and pause gaming continues, as this is going to be a marathon of a game. Kind of what you expect when you have an August Iron game, especially when you're going up against a tiny. HOG are completely comfortable, and SLHC, for me, is the MVP of this game. Yeah. Well, it is going to be G coming out from IDFC as Jabane Zero is going to be slowed down and bottom lifted up by a moment. They're going to be able to find a pick off onto this Vengeful Spirit pretty easily. The Ghost Scepter is going to amplify the damage from the ultimate, but the right click's eventually going to come through once that wears off. They do bring in the Tidehunter, are able to get the BKB off on Slash Strike, and now Nemoranios is probably going to give his life, especially when you have SLAZ here with the Whirling Death and the double Chakram just rips him apart. There's going to be split from the Brewmaster, but this split actually doesn't matter anything. They can focus these down very effectively. Fire Panda is going to be first to fall. Secondly, they're going to get the Wind Panda, and now the third Panda, he's going to die in his split. There's just nothing he can do. Double kill, Wicked Stick for Slash Strike, as now they find themselves in H Apparition, who gets MK beat, now just chased down by Slash Strike. Triple kill for Slash Strike. IDFC gets going the Rubik, but who cares? It's a Rubik. IDFC Ato step by the Timber side. Does have the double Chakram coming out, as there's a double kill. He gets killing the Viper as well with his illusions. IDFC is not taking that much damage, but neither is SLHD, and this might just be the ring on it. There is going to be a Song of the Siren coming out from Naga Siren, but what are they waiting for? They have 4 heroes dead with no buybacks. That's, for all intents and purposes, GG, especially when they lose IDFC. They're going to eat the Avalanche Toss combo, and with the double Chakram, that's it. Buyback available for the Naga Siren doesn't matter. That's Megas. Just like that, the game's going to end in a convincing fashion for HOZ. SLHZ, what a baller. In those last couple of team fights, he was the one pumping out the deeps, and that was a good game coming out from HOG. I expected them to win, but not in this fashion. There was a lot of mistakes. I definitely think that Benite plus 5 have it in them to take a game off of HOG. We're going to go into game 2 very shortly. And thanks for watching. I will be joined by co-caster Mike Loris will be with me. Thank heavens for that. So, see you soon. Right now, some ads, music, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.